payment network, Mastercard and Wirex. I'm sure everyone knows Mastercard and Wirex, but not everyone is familiar with EWPN. So let me just give you a quick intro to it. EWPN is a community for women and men alike in the payment industry. What we strive to do is create opportunities and a support group for people in this industry. And what we do is organize and create local events on relevant topics. It might be on diversity and leadership, but also on payment-related topics such as PSD2 and, like today's topic, blockchain and digital currencies. If you're interested to learn more about it, just reach out to me afterwards. By the way, I'm Riya. I'm the German ambassador for EWPN, and I'll be your moderator for today. Today's session is titled Embracing Change, the Emergence of Digital Currencies in the Payment Industry. And for that, we've got two wonderful presenters. Firstly, Caroline Casey. Caroline Casey is the Vice President of Innovation and Consumer Experience at Mastercard. But before that, her career was quite adventurous as well. She's from working from Yahoo to starting her own startup, to working from London to Hong Kong to Canada. She's done it all. So I'm quite excited to have her here today to speak about digital currencies and give us an overview of the current market. Followed by that, we'll have Riba from Wirex speaking about a real-life use case of how digital currencies are changing the payment industry. Marija is a senior marketing project manager at Wirex and has been in the industry for over 7 years. Besides that, she's conducted a few research on blockchain and digital currencies and strongly promotes women in our industry. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over the floor to Caroline.
Great, thank you so much, Riya. I'm just going to share my screen now. So before we get into the discussion with Marija, what I wanted to do is just talk a little bit about what's happening in blockchain, what's happening in this space, especially around digital currencies, and why is there so much excitement right now. So let's get into it. So I think you could definitely say that 2021 is the year of blockchain and crypto. We've heard a lot of noise in the market, quite a lot from Elon Musk, who you see here, and Tesla. Initially, a lot of interest and investment from Tesla in Bitcoin, but then are pulling back around environmental concerns, and we've also seen sort of moving back and forth on that positioning. But it's not just Elon Musk. We've seen a lot of central banks, 50 to 60 plus central banks around the world, looking at central bank digital currencies. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Another very hot topic has been NFTs, non-fungible tokens. And we heard about the Christie's auction for a very famous digital artist, Beeple, selling off a piece of art for £50 million. But also what you've seen is businesses like ours, like Mastercard, who've actually been active in blockchain for many years already, making announcements about our use cases and what we're doing with this unique technology and why we believe it's important and why we think it's valuable. We'll talk a little bit about Mastercard's some of our use cases in a moment, but you will have seen them from a whole range of different companies. And you'll have also seen some of the regulatory noise as well, some of the regulators looking at this space, which is really important in order for it to scale and progress. So China in particular making a crackdown, but you'll regularly hear from different financial authorities around the world who are looking at this space and ensuring that there's strict regulation and consumer protections. So what's been happening with the sort of crypto space is that in the last few years, we've seen this market growing exponentially. The market cap has gone from, at the start of this year, around $750 billion to 2.5 trillion around May. And then it's pulled back. Today, I think it was around, had a look, it's around 1.3 trillion. And it's sort of bubbling up and down a little bit. What we've also seen that's interesting is there's tens of millions of digital currency wallets. So this is where people who have crypto assets hold their wallets. But also what you'll notice is that we often hear about Bitcoin, we hear about Ethereum, we hear about XRP, Cardano, Uniswap, Shiba coin, and all sorts of things. But there are actually thousands of digital currencies in circulation. As new projects launch and people see new ways to use blockchain technology and to use tokens to power their ecosystems. I did want to just sort of get onto a little bit on the different terms for the people who are new in the space, but even people who've been in this space for a while. Sometimes it can be really hard to navigate and know what people are talking about. So here's a bit of a kind of high-level digital asset taxonomy to get us started. So I'm going to start off on the right-hand side here, because these are the sort of privately issued crypto assets that you'll hear quite a bit about. And now the utility tokens are the ones that people will have heard the most about. This is your Bitcoins, your XRPs, your Ether, your Dogecoin. These are referred to often in the industry as utility tokens. They don't represent equity in a company. Their purpose is not purely for investment. They actually act as a sort of a stored value that enables a service offering within a blockchain environment. But the important but is in some regions, these are actually deemed securities. And so there's a whole range of tests around that, but these can be deemed as securities. The next one across is non-fungible tokens. These are those ones we talked about a bit before about people's artwork. These are tokens that essentially represent ownership of a unique digital asset, and it's not interchangeable. So you own that digital asset and you are the owner. It can't be replicated or duplicated. And this is often across sort of digital art. It's also across domain names. So I own a Caroline Casey NFT domain name, but it's also digital collectibles. So you may have heard about, for example, NBA Top Shots, which are essentially sort of trading cards. And then there's various other tokens. There are those security tokens that we sort of mentioned when we were talking about utility tokens. So security tokens that are specifically for investment purposes. Example of that is SEA funds. There's also stock tokens. So essentially you can now buy a tokenized version of a Tesla share, and ID tokens. So they're sort of the kind of more well-known crypto assets that fall into this sort of privately issued crypto asset bucket. Across slightly to the left, we've got stable coins. These are tokens that are designed to track the value of a reference asset, whether it be gold, whether it be US dollars. And you may have heard of US dollar coin, for example. And preferably, these are backed by a deposit of that asset. So a US dollar coin actually is backed by a US dollar. And so they offer this stability for holders of crypto assets who perhaps want to trade their Bitcoin or their Ether when prices get volatile. They want to hold it on an exchange or with a custody service, but they want to keep it. They don't want to go out to fiat currency. They hold it as a stable coin often. And then across to the left, we've got these central bank digital currencies. And this is the ones that are issued by central banks. They don't have to be on a blockchain, but a lot of central banks are seeing that actually blockchain technology is a good solution. We've heard that, we know that the European Central Bank is looking at this, the Bank of England, the Riksbank in Sweden have talked about the e-krona and their work there. There's the digital yuan in China and the sand dollar in the Bahamas. So a lot of activity in that space. So before we have a quick look at Mastercard's use cases, I just want to flag that the blockchain and digital asset space is no different to any other activity we undertake as a business. We apply the same set of core principles to our work in blockchain as we do to our work anywhere else. So we are always, ensuring that we're complying with regulation, whether that be KYC and AML, sanctions, but also the regulation that exists within the markets we're operating in. We also are always very mindful of ensuring we're offering the same strong consumer protections. So safeguards against fraud and theft, and making sure we're protecting our customers and their customers. And then also stability. So this is quite important. So making sure that the crypto assets that we accept on our actual network for settlement are suitable for payment. So are they reliable, and do they offer pricing stability? So those are sort of our ways of operating, our core principles that we approach all of our activities with. And now I wanted to just have a brief look at some of our use cases at Mastercard. We've been in this space for over 5 years. We've built our own blockchain, but we work with partners regularly. We work with different blockchains as well. And we are actually the largest holder of blockchain patents in the payments industry. So we've got, I think, about 89 approved and a whole dozens more pending currently. So it's an area that we have a lot of expertise, we have a lot of engineers, and we have a lot of passion for this space. So if you look at actually where we're focusing our efforts, where we think blockchain technology makes the most sense is firstly the Mastercard Digital Asset Card Program, or Crypto Card Program, which we're going to talk to Marija about in a moment. We've also, you may have seen announcements from us around our enablement of stable coins on our network. So that's those fiat-backed stable coins is what we're looking at, actually accepting them directly onto our network, and that the payment could be accepted by a merchant. So someone could pay with a stable coin and someone could accept with a payment coin if they so wished. That's under development at the moment. The other area that we're working on is central bank digital currency testing platform. So that's working with those dozens and dozens of central banks around the globe who are currently testing CBDCs. We have a sandbox built out where they can see what will happen when we put this into the real world. How will that operate? We also believe that cross-border payments can benefit from distributed ledger technology. Anyone in that space will know that it's quite complex and cumbersome currently when you're trying to move money from A to B. Often you have to do hops through lots of correspondent banks for A to J to F to K before you get to B. So we're looking at that space as well. And the last one is proof of provenance. So did this salmon that I bought, did it genuinely come from a lake in Canada, or was it farmed in Slough on a fish farm? Is this pharmaceutical from the, is it authentic? Is it from the genuine manufacturer, or has it actually, is it a fake and it's quite dangerous for distribution? So a lot of applications for proof of provenance, for traceability of goods, and it also links in very much to another important topic for Mastercard, which is sustainability. So those are our sort of 5 core use cases. We're always exploring new avenues as well, and all of these we're working with different partners across, as you can see, a really broad range of sectors. So, but getting on to the topic for today, which is our digital asset card program, or crypto card program. So I guess why did we do this? Why do we think this was a good idea? What we saw was that digital asset conversion was cumbersome. If I'm a consumer and I hold crypto on an exchange with a custody service, with somebody else, it's actually very hard for me to spend that digital asset. I can't just go into a store with my Bitcoin and buy something in most stores. I had to exchange it for fiat, move it back out to a bank account. So we wanted to help with that. We wanted to make that much more efficient and easier for customers. We also realized that most merchants can't offer consumers that option. So on the other side, they weren't able, people who hold most of their financial wealth in crypto, merchants couldn't accept that. So that, again, is a gap. We also realized that this space is, and we know full well from all our other work, this space is complex. The regulation around payments is complicated, and we could actually help partners like Wirex and others in this space of custodian and exchange services to essentially navigate some of the complexity of the space. The actual card program itself, from a consumer perspective, is a card that you can use to spend your wealth. So there's no difference in the card that I have in my wallet from Wirex for my crypto assets to the card I have in my wallet from a high street bank. It's got the same security, it's trust, it's got the same levels of trust, it's as easy to use, just tapping, whether you've got it on your watch or your phone, just as easy, and it's accepted everywhere that accepts Mastercard, so 50 million plus accepted businesses. And as I've said, it's like our normal card program. We have the same levels of support around the technology, the product design, all those things. It's not just about spending in stores. We use our Mastercard Send program, which means you can use your card to actually send money to friends and family and things like that. It has all of those standard security protections around ID theft and emergency wallets and all of those things. But also it's part of our Accelerate program, which is our FinTech focused program, which sort of helps fast track people through the process, but also offers access to a broad range of sort of APIs for developers and things like that. So that's kind of the whistle-stop tour of what's happening in blockchain, what's happening at Mastercard, why we think it's important technology for payments, and then also the focus of today, which is around paying with cards and our work with Wirex. So I'm going to stop sharing and get into the discussion with Marija, because I think that's what we're all here to hear about. So welcome, Marija. Thank you so much for joining us for this discussion. So for those who don't know about Wirex, can you give us a little bit of a background about what you do and where you operate?
Hi, everyone. And Caroline, thank you so much for having me. Of course, so Wirex is essentially, we share those same values that you've just described about Mastercard, about making crypto and different payment methods essentially accessible, and so that customers and consumers can use them in their real world. Wirex is a crypto-friendly fintech, and this is a really important distinction to make because, again, coming back to that same thought that we want to make it crypto open and accessible, but we are not only a crypto company. So the idea behind Wirex is that we want to make all currencies equal, and we want to provide our customers with choice. So all of the crypto assets and all of the possibilities of crypto, stable coins, we want to ensure that our customers have that available to spend through their card, as well as all of those fintech features that people have become accustomed to.
Great. And what do you think's actually changed though in the past year in terms of how consumers in general are looking at thinking about cryptocurrencies?
I think that over the last year, a lot of things have changed. The whole world
yes, for sure.
True. And it's probably one of those things that everyone says, but the digital economy has really sped up, and it's taken cryptocurrencies along with them. So I think Wirex, in a way, has benefited from that. So we passed 3.5 million customers this year, and what that's really helped with is that, again, it's made the benefits of cryptocurrencies visible and spoken about by mainstream media. And I think what we're seeing in the blockchain industries as a whole is not only applicable use cases of cryptocurrencies for speculation or for financial instruments, but what we're seeing is that blockchain itself has real life use cases that have really benefited people.
And which are like kind of out of interest, which are the use cases that as Wirex outside, as well as payments, is there any others that sort of caught your eye?
For me personally, yes.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting how the blockchain has been used now for medical purposes, for example, to identify or to track people's medical history. Obviously, that's not related to cryptocurrencies or payments at all, but it's already an interesting use case of blockchain as a technology. And then if we come back to cryptocurrencies, it's really interesting to see how in different countries around the world, especially stable coins, are being used to fight hyperinflation, to facilitate market access for possibly the underbanked, or other kind of real life use cases that are making access to finance more equitable.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very good point. It's interesting, sort of colleagues and friends in LAC in particular, at certain points in time, the hyperinflation has made stable coins very, very needed option, I guess. And then digging further into the crypto card program itself, when did you launch? I mean, I guess I know, but so that's a bit of a leading question, isn't it? But maybe talk to us about when it launched and kind of what was the problem to be solved for your customers.
So we became Mastercard principal members last year, and that meant that essentially we could launch our own Wirex Mastercard this year. So we launched in March. And I suppose, so we've had a card since 2015, but because we didn't have this direct integration with a company like Mastercard, we were relying on white label solutions. And the challenge with that is that we don't have the full flexibility over the technology. So we couldn't, for example, guarantee the stability. We couldn't offer any of those additional perks that you were talking about, like send money, or kind of basically build out a proper fintech as well as crypto solution for our customers.
Yeah, so a bespoke Wirex proposition, I guess you're saying. Yeah, and what was the, I guess what was the value to the customers that you saw, and have you had feedback from customers? Are you hearing kind of anything interesting from the customers themselves?
Definitely. So we've run a couple of focus groups this year, specifically after we've launched the MasterCard. And it's very interesting to hear back, because our customer base is not purely crypto enthusiasts like you might expect. A lot of people sign up to Wirex to actually access the benefits of, easy like fiat to fiat conversion, as well as crypto to fiat. And one of the things, maybe I need to go back a few steps and explain one of our main value propositions, which is a world first called Crypto Back Rewards. And essentially what it is a cashback program, but you get your cashback in crypto. And depending on our rewards subscription tiers, you can get up to 2% both in-store spend, online. And for a lot of people, what we're hearing from the focus groups is that this is their first introduction to crypto at all. And within just, just buying a coffee in a coffee shop means that they're now crypto owners. They hold digital assets because they've received crypto back.
Oh, right. So that's quite interesting. So you're not only catering to the crypto audience, you're actually introducing this whole new audience to crypto. And what's that? Have you had any feedback on how does your customer base feel about? I mean, that must be quite an educational experience for them.
I mean, in my own personal experience, it was my first ownership of digital assets, I must admit. So that was quite exciting. But also for people that we've spoken to in the focus groups, they have really become used to this and really champion it, because what they're saying, and this is a direct quote from one of the people that we've interviewed, that it's their crypto generator card. They can spend it however they want, and then they get back the crypto into their account.
Okay, so it's interesting. So I guess I assume that starts to drive kind of top of wallet behavior around a card when you're getting the benefit and you're getting something unique, like generating up to 2% in crypto. So that's really interesting. And I guess, what are the areas that you're hoping, even outside of crypto, what are the areas you're hoping to really grow and develop in your business? What's it heading towards, and what are the sort of key goals for Wirex?
Of course. So what we're trying to do is really look at the market, and that is all aspects of the market, as you've mentioned, regulation, that's a big one, but
Yeah.
also where the industries are heading, both crypto and fiat, and kind of really trying to merge them together to make a real life use case for people who want to have more flexibility over the way they pay. So what we're looking at the moment is really kind of following, tracking the market and understanding what kind of benefits of the maybe traditional financial sector we can take and put a crypto spin on it and bring similar benefits to our customers relying on crypto technologies. So for example, because that all sounded very vague, we recently launched a new product called X Accounts. And what X Accounts does is it enables customers to actually stake their fiat or crypto and earn a certain percentage, up to 16% interest on those assets.
Oh wow! So that's quite that's quite chunky amount of interest, isn't it? So that's
especially in this market, which is why it's such a real life benefit, and we're seeing a lot of interest. I think within less than a week after launch, we had something like 5 million stored in the X accounts. So it's definitely something that is very relevant to consumers now.
How do you actually educate consumers on these propositions, though? I think, to me, it's kind of interesting because there's so many things happening in this space, and we see it kind of at Mastercard is even just trying to educate our colleagues about it, but also then, you know, working with our customers and their customers. The education piece is really, I think, really quite tricky, because especially as you've got all of these new opportunities coming out, especially with really high interest, how do you help your customers through that journey?
So I think this really depends on which consumers we're speaking to, because again, we have that combination of people who are crypto enthusiasts, who know the market, who understand what technologies underlay these sorts of benefits. But also we have the kind of more mainstream consumers who might be a bit skeptical, and they don't know how this works and how are you offering me 16%. And to the more detail-oriented crypto enthusiasts, we've provided a very comprehensive description that our head of trading has made, where he basically outlined exactly what happens, and if somebody's interested, they can read that. They can find that on our blog, they can find that in our community forum, they can find that on our social media. But for the people who might not be as in-depth, we've made a series of videos which kind of explain this in a fairly simple but comprehensive way, so that it's easy to understand, but it also provides that trust factor. Sorry. Yeah,
because I think you touched on a really interesting point there, is that, I mean, it does sound too good to be true, and often if something's too good to be true, it's not necessarily true. And I think because we still do have the problem in the industry of there are scams that exist in our industry, where people, you know, are kind of making large claims. So I guess it's how do you, and it sounds like you guys are doing a really good job of it, is how do you ensure that the consumers can differentiate between what's safe, what's regulated, what's got protection around it, like the Wirex offerings, versus how do they then go into the big bad world or big wide world and work out what's good and what's not. So I guess I don't know if you had any thoughts on that as well.
I would say that it would be quite, so what we try to do is we differentiate and we make it very clear which aspects are regulated and protected by consumer protections, and which ones are protected by, you know, well, basically at which point customers are at risk. Obviously, in the way that we make this system work, it's as secure as it possibly can be, and customer funds are not at risk to the point where they can be stolen or anything like that. But obviously, when you're staking something and you're lending it out to crypto borrowers, that is still a risky business, and therefore we make sure that they're aware of the risks.
Yes, yeah. So that education piece is important, because it's not like an interest on a standard deposit, is it? As you say, it's actually being lent out. So there's some additional things there. And what do you believe are the sort of, what's going to happen in blockchain and crypto in the next few years? When you look in your crystal ball, what do you see?
That's a really good question, and one that I think everyone wants to know the answer to. Unfortunately, we don't know, but we can predict. Definitely, regulation is going to be a massive part of this, because already regulators are very interested in the way that crypto is developing, especially stable coins, and how that poses a challenge to maybe the traditional ecosystem. But I think in the next 3 years, definitely we're going to see a little bit of a consistent approach taken by regulators to simplify this, and maybe certain markets will then copy other markets if they've already figured out like a good approach. And I think the FCA are really leading on this. So the fact that other countries will then kind of follow suit basically would be beneficial, so that we have a consistent regulatory approach. And then on the other side, kind of the innovation side, because I always feel like this is a bit of a dichotomy, the innovation, obviously because of the enthusiasm and the mainstream attention to crypto and blockchain technologies, I think we're going to see a lot more innovation, and we're going to see a lot more replication in a good sense of standard traditional financial instruments. And I think what's really interesting about this aspect is, obviously the standard traditional financial industry had, hundreds of years to develop. Blockchain just was invented like 30 years ago. So we're seeing this very rapidly. And I think there's a lot of very passionate people in this industry who will create lots of very new, innovative technologies that might even, be something completely new that we haven't seen before with the traditional side of things.
Yeah, and I think you have a really good point there. I guess I sort of started my career at the start of in the mid-90s or early 90s, at the start of the World Wide Web, and worked in that space. And I guess some of the use cases that we thought were going to be the big hits actually didn't end up really going a long way. And some of the things we thought weren't feasible, like buying clothes online, was just people like, that will never happen, never ever happen. Even reading the news online in the early stages, I worked for media companies, and we were like, no, we publish it online, but it will always be, the newspaper will always win. And you see that, and I look at blockchain, and I feel we are at those very early stages of knowing where it will lead to in the long term. But I wanted to sort of switch gears slightly, and we'll take some questions a bit after this, but I want to switch gears to you and how you essentially became involved in the fintech space and in cryptocurrencies, and what drew you towards crypto and blockchain and fintech.
That's really interesting, because I would say that I have a lot of tech-minded friends. So kind of as soon as Bitcoin first appeared, I even know people who bought it right away and then ended up really regretting selling it early. So it was kind of always in the periphery, but it did, until it hit mainstream media, it remained in the periphery. And so I wasn't that familiar with it, but I was working for a payment service provider at the time, and I began hearing it more and more, because I think we had a crypto exchange as a client, and then we had considerations of whether or not we should accept cryptocurrency as a payment method, and there was all these discussions. So crypto became kind of a much bigger part of the discussion. And then with Wirex, it was very fascinating to me, because it's that essentially it's that combination of the traditional fintech with a crypto twist. So I was very familiar with the standard fintech side of things, but what intrigued me was this crypto twist, and especially like when I got told about these world firsts, like the first crypto-enabled debit card and the first crypto-back rewards program and things like that. And I thought that it was a very interesting proposition, which I hadn't seen on the market before.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's interesting because I guess I was sort of probably similar to you. I was quite attracted. I'm a geek from way back, and like had worked in the web, and I'd worked on the first mobile apps and the social and everything that came out that was new. But actually, to be honest, the thing that's the technology that excited me most when I first sort of started to engage with it, and I thought genuinely this is truly game changing, was blockchain. And I decided that I really needed to work in it. I didn't know exactly where or how, but I'd been kind of working in media and tech companies, and felt like the technology that I was seeing in blockchain was going to be really game changing. And that was I then sort of started consulting in this space and investing and things like that, several years back, and then joined Mastercard because I was aware of that they were active in this space. And it didn't seem that, even going back 3 years, there didn't seem to be a lot of activity that big companies were working in it and banks working in it, but no one was talking about it much. It was a little bit of a secret. But now I think we all know that there's definitely most companies are starting to see opportunity in this space. And so I've got just one last question. What advice would you have? Because I think we're seeing more women in the space, but we don't necessarily see a lot of women in blockchain and crypto. What would you say to them, if they want to get involved in the industry? What would be, what are the sorts of prerequisites? Are there prerequisites? How do they build knowledge? How do they get involved if they want their career to move in this direction?
Yeah, I think actually we are seeing a lot more women in crypto, both as digital asset holders and as people working within the industry. So it's definitely changing, but I get what you mean, that traditionally speaking, it was more men were involved in it, and probably still kind of hold most of the senior roles. At the moment, I think that's the best way to get involved is just to have this perpetual curiosity and just really want to learn as much as possible. Like that probably is the only prerequisite, because if you don't, there's so many concepts, new concepts, and they're always changing, so that you kind of need to read as much as possible, watch as much as possible, and talk to as many people within the industry as you can. Wirex is actually doing a campaign. It was hugely successful last year when we launched it, and it's coming back for 2021, called the Women in Crypto campaign. And what this is a series of networking lectures. We're also going to have a Rising Women in Crypto Power List, so an award ceremony. And what we're also looking at this year specifically is getting some mentorship. So the women who actually won last year, or who are recognized as trailblazers within the industry, they can kind of give back to the community by beginning to work with maybe school leavers or people who are just starting out in their careers. So we're hoping to kind of build that network out and hopefully get more women involved.
And how do people get involved? Is it on your website, or is it how people? Because it sounds fantastic. I'm sure lots of people like, I want to get involved in that.
At the moment, yeah. So we have all of the things will be on our social, on our blog, in our community forum. And then what we're looking to do is create a landing page where people can submit applications or get in touch with us specifically about the Women in Crypto campaign.
Okay, so if they're following you on social, they should be able to keep up to date with it. Yeah, because I think it is an interesting thing, and I think it's fantastic that you're doing this. I noticed when I started working initially in crypto, there was not as many women involved, but it's definitely changed over time. And I think also one thing people should remember is, I think what we've seen over the past couple of years is a real maturity of the industry. And it does make me think back to the early days of the web, where initially the early days of the web, I was a product person, you worked with an engineer, and you were kind of jack of all trades, and you kind of did a bit of everything. And then the industry matures, and you need those experts in marketing, you need the experts in business development, you need all of these levels of expertise. So there is a job, I think, for everyone in crypto and blockchain, because all those expertise and those skills are needed. But you do, it is very important and valuable to educate yourself via the different channels that you've mentioned, Marija, about, how do I understand what's happening? You don't have to, go out and be mining and understand hash rates and all sorts of things like that. You don't have to become an engineer to get in this space. I think that's important to make really clear. But understanding what are the applications for blockchain? Why would you use a blockchain versus a single database? All those sorts of things are good to kind of get, because then you can do whatever you do well, you can do it even better in blockchain. But I think very, very interesting space, and hopefully some of the people who are on this session will have a little ignition of desire to get involved in blockchain like you and I are. But on that note, let's switch over. I've seen there's a lot of chat coming through. I think Marija is going to guide us through this chat, so I'll hand over to Marija.
Sure. So there are a few questions. I think the first one is, what is your opinion about digital currencies and games, so in the gaming industry?
I'm happy. I mean, I used to actually work in gaming, so I worked in massive multiplayer online gaming at one stage of my career. I think it's a very interesting space. I think there's a lot of activity there. I think you actually also find there's quite an alignment between people who are quite serious gamers and the crypto industry. So you've even seen where those individuals like to congregate is some of the sense of Discord and some of those environments. So I think there's definitely we're going to see growth. We're seeing, the NFTs and the ownership of digital assets, those sorts of costumes and power-ups and all those sorts of things you can see being tokenized and are already being tokenized. So I think personally, this is not the Mastercard view, but my personal view on gaming is, it is a massive industry. There is a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of alignment already, and that's why we're seeing a lot of talk in this space. Marija, I don't know if you've similarly seen.
I completely agree with you. I think there is a very clear alignment, and I think that a lot of the cryptocurrencies themselves are very aware of that, and they're looking to attract people who are gamers or who are interested in games to their blockchain. So for example, I know that Nano, which is one of the tokens that we have on our platform, they have a kind of I don't know if it's a sister company, it might be just a fan-made app, which is called We Nano, and you can basically go to these spots and collect Nano, which is a great way to gamify the process of earning crypto, and then you can actually earn crypto for free and go spend it, which is absolutely fantastic. And there's obviously a lot of alignment with gaming tokens. We're actually exploring maybe adding some of them on our platform as well. So definitely a lot of alignment and a way to attract the gaming community onto, for example, Wirex platform, or kind of to use the payment rails that are available to them.
Yeah, and I think you saw, I guess, I'm just thinking about things like CryptoKitties was one of the big sort of noise around that, and then also something like Decentraland, which is based on Ethereum. So there's a lot of as you say, a lot of things already happening in that space, and it's no doubt will just get kind of bigger.
Perfect, thank you both. So the next question would be on famous influencers and entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, how they are impacting and influencing cryptocurrencies. So I'm guessing Sandrine is referring to what happened recently when Elon Musk commented on Twitter on Bitcoins, and it influences the price quite heavily. So what is your take on that?
Should I take this one first?
Yeah, you go first. Yeah, for sure.
I would say that obviously public figures have always had some influence over people's decisions. So if we're talking about Elon Musk specifically, I mean, the tokens that he's talking about are speculative tokens. We obviously hope for more integration into real life use cases, but at this point in time, they are very much used for speculation. And therefore, a tweet from an influencer can send the price either skyrocketing upwards or, on the contrary, falling down. But either way, I think it's a very good way of making this industry more accessible to people, and more so people become curious as to what is Elon Musk talking about? Why is this of interest to people? And they begin researching and then making their own conclusions.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Is people, influencers, they're called influencers because they influence behaviors, and it's no different in this industry. I think probably what came as a surprise was how influential Elon Musk's tweets became. At a certain point in time, they seem to have dissipated. I've seen a lot of people analyzing how powerful his tweets are now compared to when he first made a few tweets and on the topic of crypto. But as you say, also there's a danger there in following influencers, especially when it's around speculative tokens that aren't necessarily part of an ecosystem that's delivering value, is that they shoot up and down and it can be quite dangerous. So I think we'll continue to see that to some extent, but I think maybe it's been a bit of a learning curve for a lot of newer investors. Hopefully in doing your own research and doing your own homework. But I do think actually on the other side of it, I think he has drawn attention to some very important topics like the environment and Bitcoin mining, and that the fact that actually not all algorithms used in the creation of tokens are the same, and so we don't need to actually impact the environment quite to that extent. So he's shone a spotlight on some important issues, but yeah, at a time driving prices into a very erratic fashion, which could mean that some consumers really have been burnt, I guess.
Thank you. There's another question from Orion. How widely is the digital asset card program distributed at the moment?
So at the moment, oh, sorry.
Sorry,
did you say Maria? Caroline or Maria? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
To both of you.
Yeah, no, you go first, Maria. You've actually got the program, so you're best placed to answer it.
So we offer a Wirex card in EEA, UK, and in APAC. And I don't have the exact figures, but it's very, very widely used. I think we're looking at something like, oh, I don't want to lie, I'm afraid. But I think it's in the thousands of transactions per day. So in just the UK alone or in the EEA alone. So it's very good. But obviously there's a lot of room for growth, and Wirex is constantly looking at different markets, looking at USA, we're hoping to launch there by the end of the year, and looking at expanding in other markets as well. So I think there's a lot of room for the card program to grow. Sorry, Caroline, I think it's over to you now.
Okay, well, no, you kind of answered most of it. And I guess also we're sort of, the program's open to working with different partners, in different territories. So of course it's widespread. It's we're working with, we have obviously sort of our onboarding and our rules and regulations that we comply with, but it's an open program, and Wirex was one of our first partners, and very, very special partner for us. But we do continue to do more partnerships as time goes on and there becomes more interest in this space. So we're definitely kind of open for business.
Perfect. And there's a question from Robert. Has there been any insights around which demographic is most open to using crypto? He's assuming it would be a Gen Z or digital natives. Is that correct?
I have actually done research into this, so I am very excited to answer this one. It's fascinating. Okay, so we did a survey with the Stellar Foundation last year, and we kind of surveyed our mutual user base. So the data might be a bit skewed, but if we're talking the people who use Wirex, the average age is a lot higher than you would think. So I think, it's 57.4% of our user base is older than the age of 45. So it's not Gen Z
Wow.
at all. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I feel okay now.
No, I think it makes sense, right? Like Gen Z might be interested in the new technologies, but if we're talking about people who have money, it's people who are slightly older.
It's interesting because I think I've seen some, I think that's fantastic to hear, because I've seen some studies, but you're talking about people who actually do it as well. And whereas a lot of, I think there's some studies I've seen are around openness to spending, you know, investing in digital assets and spending with digital assets. And that does seem to skew younger, but you know, the people who are actually really doing it, as you say, are the ones who've got money, or have essentially hold crypto. So they're the ones who have got the capability.
Actually, one of the interesting findings from that survey as well is that women are a lot more active than you would think. So one of the findings that we had is older women are more likely to invest in crypto than their male counterparts.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's really fascinating.
It was one of the shockers from our survey.
And Maria, does your research show why that's the reason? Like, why? What's the motivation behind?
Not why, but obviously we can draw our own conclusions as to why. Possibly because women who have more of a financial financial ability to invest, they're looking for different investment opportunities, and maybe they find that, or on the contrary, maybe they find that crypto offers them the use cases for what they need to achieve.
Interesting.
Then there is a question from Jacqueline. She's asking, what are the criteria for a regular person to acquire membership wealth in the crypto world? So I'm guessing, how can you inform yourself better to actually be involved in this world and play the game, basically?
Did you want to pick that up, Maria, based on how people get onto Wirex, I guess?
Yeah, of course. So I think that it's mostly just about reading as much as you can. Just the same as if you want to work in blockchain, you have to familiarize yourself with what you're doing. So it's open to everyone, obviously, and something like Wirex offers the perfect on-ramp, because you don't really need to go through anything other than the usual KYC. So you open an account, you begin, you can very easily open crypto accounts, transfer, exchange, and things like that. So it's a very nice introduction to the crypto world, but you don't really need anything beyond, an online kind of access, and that should be sufficient.
Yeah, and I think if you do a search online as well, there's a massive amount of resources. There's Eventbrite has lots of events for free, similar to these types of events. There's a lot of platforms like Cointelegraph, like Bloomberg actually has a really good sort of insights on what's happening in the industry. CoinMarketCap is a really good resource to track activity. So I think there's a lot of resources online, and then I think joining groups and taking part in conversations is a good way to educate yourself.
There's also going to be an event from EWPN again on blockchain and crypto, so we'll send out the details afterwards. And I think, looking at the time, maybe a last question to you, Caroline. Given that in a few industries, what are the challenges unique to the fintech industry?
I think that probably the big one that sort of stands out is actually the regulation of this industry, which is super important. But it is quite different to when you're operating. There's regulation in all industries, but I think particularly strict regulation in this industry. This is people's financial assets and their future that you're dealing with. So super important. That would be, I would say, one of the ones that's also, because it's quite new for regulators, is evolving. So keeping pace with that for fintech companies is really important and can seem onerous, but very much needed.
Perfect. So it's almost 2 o'clock, so I just wanted to thank you both for this insightful session. The questions we didn't manage to address, we'll address them in a mail. And if you have any questions, just reach out to us after the session. And thank you everyone for your time, and speak to you soon, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Maria, and thanks, Maria, for organizing this. Thank you, and thanks to EWPN.
And thank you for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.